This isn't a story about cheating in the way you probably think. Nobody got naked. Nobody kissed. But I still wake up at night thinking about that moment and what almost happened. It was raining hard. I remember the sound more than anything. My husband was gone on a work trip. I was home alone. And then his brother showed up. He said he was just dropping off something Neil forgot. But what really got dropped off that night was a truth I wasn't ready to hear. He crossed a line. And the scariest part? I think I wanted him to. Have you ever looked someone in the eye and realized they see you more clearly than the person you married? Would you have stopped it? Or would you have let it happen? Let's talk about it in the comments. I really want to know. How far is too far when it comes to emotional cheating? And hey, if stories like this hit you right in the gut, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new here. I've got a lot more to say. This is how it started, with a storm outside. And a storm I never saw coming inside my own home. Before we get to that night, the moment everything shifted, I need you to understand the people in this story. Because none of it makes sense without knowing who we were before it all cracked. Gabriella Patrick. Me. I used to think I was complicated. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too in my head all the time. But really, I just wanted to feel understood. I'm Gabriella. I'm 38. I spend more time talking to my plants than I do to my husband lately. I paint, not professionally. Not anymore. It used to be my dream. I wanted to open a little studio, teach kids, maybe have a corner gallery, but that kind of dream doesn't survive when you're married to a man like Neil. He's not a bad guy. Let me say that right now. He's not cruel or dishonest. He's just absent. Not physically, always, but emotionally. God, it's like living with a ghost who still pays the bills. He doesn't ask me how I'm feeling anymore, doesn't even notice when I'm quiet or when I cry into my pillow facing the other way. I stopped bringing up my dreams. Every time I did, he'd say, "It's not practical right now, babe," and I'd nod. Swallow it. Smile. I became the quiet wife, the low-maintenance one, the good one, and somewhere in that silence, I disappeared. Neil Shaw, my husband. Neil is solid, reliable, the guy people go to when stuff breaks down. He'll fix your car, your taxes, your broken fence, but he doesn't know how to fix a broken heart. Maybe he doesn't even see it. He's 42, works in finance, lives by logic, loves a good spreadsheet more than small talk. He's not the guy who remembers your anniversary, but he'll always make sure your car has gas. When we first met, that stability felt like safety. I was tired of drama. Tired of guys who were all spark and no spine. Neil was different. Calm, steady, safe. But over time, that calm turned into quiet. Then the quiet turned into distance. Lately he's been gone a lot. Took a consulting job 2 states away. Comes home maybe 1 weekend a month. Sometimes less. We still talk if you can call texting about bills and schedules talking. He thinks he's doing right by us. Working hard, providing. That if the lights are on and the fridge is full, the marriage must be fine. But love doesn't live in grocery receipts. And lately, it doesn't live here at all. Curls. Everett Moran. His brother. And then, there's Everett. Neil's younger brother. 36. A complete opposite in every way. Where Neil is structured, Everett is spontaneous. Where Neil holds things in, Everett lets you see him. We've always had this connection. Friendly, playful, harmless, or so I told myself. Family events. Cookouts, birthdays, we always ended up side by side, talking music, art, books Neil would never touch. He asked questions, real ones, listened. Remember, I used to tell myself it was just a nice bond, a brother-in-law who cared. But deep down, I think I always knew he looked at me differently. Not in an inappropriate way, not overtly, but you feel it when someone sees you. He'd ask about my painting even when Neil forgot I still did it. He noticed when I changed my hair, picked up on my moods without me having to explain. And I ignored it, because I had to, because I was married, because he was family, because we weren't supposed to cross that line. But feelings don't care about rules. They sneak up on you, especially when you're lonely, especially when someone finally makes you feel seen. That's who we were before that night. 3 people stuck in a triangle no one meant to build. And the worst, I never saw the danger until it was already at the door. Gabriella had always been a woman of quiet passions. Her sketchbook was her sanctuary, a place where she could pour out her thoughts and feelings without judgment. One evening, she completed a drawing that captured a moment from their early days, a time when laughter came easily, and love was palpable. Eager to share it, she approached Neil, who was engrossed in his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Hey, I just finished something I think you'll like," she said, holding up the sketch. Neil glanced briefly, offered a distracted, "Looks good, babe," and returned to his screen. The moment passed, unacknowledged. Dinner times had become exercises in silence. They sat across from each other, the clinking of cutlery the only sound between them. Conversations were sparse, often limited to discussions about bills or schedules. The warmth that once filled their home had dissipated, leaving a cold void. Gabriella often found herself reminiscing about their past. She remembered the spontaneous road trips, the shared jokes, the nights spent talking about everything and nothing. Those memories felt like fragments from another life. In her journal, she wrote, "I feel like a ghost in my own home, present, but unseen." One night, seeking closeness, she reached out to Neil in bed. "Neil, can we talk?" she asked softly. He turned away, muttering, "Not tonight, I'm white." The rejection stung, not because of the words but because of the pattern they represented. A consistent turning away, a refusal to engage. Gabriella tried to bridge the gap. She suggested weekend getaways, initiated conversations, planned date nights. Each attempt was met with indifference or excuses. The emotional chasm between them widened. Alone in the living room, she watched their wedding video. Tears streamed down her face as she saw the joy and love that once defined their relationship. She missed that version of Neil, the one who looked at her with adoration, who made her feel cherished. Her art became an outlet for her emotions. The canvases she painted were filled with dark, chaotic strokes, reflecting the turmoil within her. Then, one day she received a text from Everett. "Thinking of you, hope you're okay." It was a simple message, but it reminded her that she wasn't invisible to everyone. It was a rainy Thursday evening, the kind of rain that seems to wash the world clean, yet leaves a lingering chill in the air. I was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, a book in hand, trying to lose myself in someone else's story. The house was quiet, save for the rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the window. Neil had been home briefly between projects, a whirlwind visit filled with hurried conversations and half-hearted hugs. In his rush, he forgot his work tablet, a minor oversight, but one that would set the stage for an unexpected encounter. Everett, Neil's younger brother, was tasked with retrieving the forgotten tablet. When he arrived, he was soaked from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, and his clothes clinging to his frame. I invited him in, offering a towel and a warm drink, while the storm outside intensified. We sat in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows on the walls. Our conversations started casually, touching on work, family, and the mundanities of daily life. But as the rain persisted, our dialogue deepened. He noticed my sketches scattered on the coffee table, and picked one up. "These are incredible," he said, genuinely impressed. I shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Neil never mentions them," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Everett looked at me, his gaze steady. "I see you, Gab. Always have." Those words hung in the air, heavier than the storm outside. It wasn't just the compliment, it was the acknowledgement, the recognition I had been yearning for. In that moment, I felt seen, understood, and valued. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was filled with unspoken emotions, a mutual understanding that something had shifted. We didn't speak of it, but we both felt it. Eventually the rain subsided, and Everett prepared to leave. As he stood at the door, he turned to me, his eyes searching mine. "Take care, Gabby," he said softly. "You too," I replied, my voice tinged with emotions I couldn't quite name. After he left, I stood by the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. My heart was a mix of confusion, guilt, and a strange sense of warmth. Nothing had happened, yet everything felt different. The rain had been falling steadily for hours, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the quiet tension in the room. Gabriella sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, as Everett stood by the window, watching the droplets race down the glass. Breaking the silence, Everett spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you know how hard it's been, watching you be unloved, the way you deserve? Gabriella turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise and a hint of fear. You can't say that, she replied, her voice trembling. He took a step closer, the distance between them shrinking. I've loved you for years, never said it, never dared, but I can't hold it anymore. Tears welled up in Gabriella's eyes as she looked away, trying to process the weight of his confession. Sometimes I wish I met you first, she admitted, her voice cracking. The room was thick with emotion, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil within. They found themselves inches apart, the air charged with unspoken desires and regret. But then, Gabriella stepped back, creating a physical and emotional distance between them. No, we can't. I won't do this, she said firmly. Everett nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. I know, I just needed you to know. The silence that followed was filled with a mix of relief and sorrow, as both grappled with the reality of their choices. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Everett's words echoing in my mind. I've loved you for years. The weight of his confession pressed heavily on my chest, intertwining with my own unspoken feelings. I hadn't crossed a line physically, but emotionally, I was teetering on the edge. In the days that followed, I found myself withdrawing. Conversations with Neil became even more superficial, our interactions reduced to logistical exchanges about bills and schedules. He noticed the change. You seem far away lately, he remarked one evening, his eyes searching mine for an explanation. I offered a weak smile. Just tired, I guess. But it was more than fatigue. It was the burden of secrets and the guilt of desires unfulfilled, yet deeply felt. Family gatherings became strained. Everett, once a constant presence, began to distance himself. He'd make excuses to skip events or leave early, avoiding prolonged interaction. His absence was palpable, a silent acknowledgement of the boundary we'd nearly crossed. I questioned myself incessantly. Was it worse that nothing happened, or that I wanted it to? The emotional turmoil was relentless, a storm that refused to subside. One afternoon, while sorting through my phone, I stumbled upon a voicemail from Everett. I hesitated before pressing play. I'll always love you, his voice trembled, but I'll never ruin what's not mine. Tears welled up in my eyes. The message was never meant to be heard, yet it encapsulated the depth of our unspoken bond. After that voicemail, I never saw Everett alone again. There were no more quiet visits, no lingering eye contact at family events, no texts asking if I was okay. He slipped back into his life, and I stayed in mine. We didn't talk about that night, and we didn't have to. The silence said everything, but I couldn't just shake it off. Not because I was in love with Everett. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't, but because what happened between us, or almost happened, forced me to finally look at the woman I had become. And I didn't like what I saw. I had spent so long being quiet, swallowing how I felt, playing the part of the wife who didn't need too much. But inside, I was starving for connection. That's what scared me the most. Not that Everett confessed his feelings, but that it felt like a lifeline I wasn't ready to grab and maybe secretly wanted to. So I made a choice, one for myself. I started therapy, not couples therapy, just me. I needed to understand why I'd been living like a ghost in my own story. The first few sessions were awkward. I cried more than I talked, but I kept showing up, and slowly, I began painting again. Not just soft landscapes or polite portraits. I painted with anger, grief, longing. Every canvas became a page in a story I never knew how to tell. Until now. A few months in, I mentioned therapy to Neil. I didn't expect much, but to my surprise, he asked if he could come to one, then another. It wasn't magic, no dramatic breakthroughs, but it was something, a beginning, maybe the first real conversation we'd had in years. I never told Neil about Everett, about what almost happened, about what was said. Part of me still wonders if I should have, but I chose not to. And maybe that was my final act of loyalty, not to protect Neil, but to protect the version of myself I was finally trying to become. But let me be honest with you, I still think about that night, not because I wish it had gone further, but because it woke me up. It made me see how easy it is to lose yourself, one quiet compromise at a time. Everett crossed a line, and I almost followed, but in the end, I stepped back, because walking away from what tempts you, that's not weakness, That's power. That's healing. That's choosing yourself. We didn't have an affair, but sometimes, the betrayal isn't in what you do, it's in what you allow yourself to feel. Still, not a day goes by where I don't wonder what would have happened if the rain hadn't fallen quite so hard, if he hadn't shown up that night, if I hadn't let him in, both to the house and to my heart. But I did, and now I live with it. What would you have done in Gabriella's shoes? Would you have told Neil? Would you have gone further with Everett? Or do you think walking away was the right call? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and if this story hit something in you, if it made you think, made you feel, or made you pause, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe. I've got more stories like this, real, raw, complicated, because it's never just one thing, and neither are we.